Friday USDA reports are always fun, and that's what we had in the grain market today. And Tom Leffler of Leffler Commodities, how have we seen them react?
Greg, actually, they held less tweaking than what the trade was looking for. They really didn't have much effect. Little gyration after they came out. We are seeing this market right now. Trade on both sides of unchanged without any new highs or lows being made. We did see the USDA raise the Kansas wheat crop by almost 14 million bushels. Other than that, very quiet.
Kansas City wheat July unchanged, 453 3/4. September up a half, 471 1/4. In Chicago, July wheat down 1 at 448 1/4. September down 1 at 462 1/4. July corn up 2 1/2 at 388 3/4. July soybeans are up 2 3/4, 940 3/4. This is the Kansas Ag Network.
Being animal agriculture, you can't be selfish. You have to take care of those animals before you take care of yourself.
If I lose a baby calf, I beat myself up about it. I guess I feel like they're here to feed us, and I'm here to take care of them.
Our end goal is to produce a safe product for the consumer.
It is not just a job out here. It is a way of life, and we would like to preserve that way of life.
The family-owned farms and ranches of Kansas. Care and respect practiced daily.
The Franklin County Farm Bureau Association wants to take you away this summer. July 25th through July 27th, you'll stop at Merrimack Caverns on the way to St. Louis and Union Station. Then it's off to the Monsanto Research Facility for all new things in agriculture. And the trip concludes with a wine history in Hermann, Missouri, and a meet and greet with the world-famous Budweiser Clydesdales. Transportation, lodging, and meals are included, and a $50 deposit holds your reservation. Full payment due by June 15th. For more information, call Sharon at 242-4130.
Crude oil up 40 cents, $46.04 a barrel. Gold down $8.10 an ounce. And Tom Leffler of Leffler Commodities, what's happening at Wall Street?
We are seeing the second straight session of new all-time record highs in the stock market. Currently, we're up 85 points at 21,268. And the June dollar index has been positive all day. It has came off its highs, though, but still 33 cents higher at 97.23.
Listen for your next farm news report at 1:40 on KOFO.
KOFO 103.7 FM and 1220 presents Your Town with David Potter as we discuss current events and issues in East Central Kansas relevant to you. We invite you to join in the conversation by calling 242-1220, email potter@kofo.com, or share your thoughts on Facebook at KOFO Radio. Now, here's the host of Your Town, KOFO's David Potter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Town here on KOFO. I am David Potter, bringing you an abbreviated version of Your Town today. We have Ottawa Arrows baseball coming up with a pregame show at 12:45, so a little less time than usual today. So if you want to call in, have your voice heard here on Your Town, you'll want to do so early. The number, as always, is 785-242-1220, and as always, no matter what you want to talk about, give us a call. You're free to weigh in on the matter I'm discussing, but you're not obligated to do so. You can call about anything going on locally, regionally, or nationally as it pertains to you or the area, current events, politics, sports, whatever you want to discuss. I'm open to it. 785-242-1220. And where I'll start is Topeka, and I've taken the last couple of weeks off of talking about Topeka and politics, but finally they've given us a couple of things to talk about. Since the legislature came back from their break back in April, the entire month of April, the only thing that would have really been discussion was basically just the state government had been spinning its wheels. They weren't agreeing on much of anything, and if they started to agree on anything, it fell apart because they knew it would eventually be vetoed by the governor, so they would have had the support to override it in most of those cases. A couple of weeks ago, it looked like maybe they got a tax bill going, but it barely passed through the Senate. The House rejected it. But all that changed this week, and I think most everybody knows by now it's been pretty big news here within the state, and even nationally. I've seen multiple articles written on it. So it's been something that eyes have been on even across the United States. But the legislature passed a tax bill very similar to that February tax bill that they passed but had vetoed by Sam Brownback. But now, back in February, they tried to override that veto, and the House actually did exactly that, but the Senate didn't have the votes to do so. This time, they were going to have to flip even more representatives in the House, only one in the Senate. So kind of a flip-flop situation in order to override the veto this time. And one senator did exactly that, and he put it on to the House to get... They needed about a dozen or so votes or people who voted against the bill to go ahead and vote to override the veto and put the bill into place, which happened with several representatives and one or two senators the first time around. Basically, legislators saying that, hey, I'm not a huge fan of this bill, but I know that something needs to get done. Clearly, a vast majority of legislators think that this needs to be it, so I'm willing to go ahead and override the veto just to go ahead and get something accomplished. That's generally been the mindset behind the people who are voting against the bill but still voting to overturn the veto and, in essence, the second time around vote for the bill. But surprisingly, that's exactly what happened. The legislature collectively said, hey, the bill isn't perfect, but it gets us down the path that we need to be headed on, and we're sick of being held hostage by the executive branch. And I'm happy that they did it. I've said before on the program that the governor's been trying to play all three branches of government between dictating to the legislature what is and isn't acceptable in terms of how to fix really his mess, and last year trying to get the Supreme Court thrown out so he could appoint his own justices who would approve his measures and really his view on governing. So I'm thrilled that the legislature voted to override that veto, and yes, I'm happy that they raised taxes. It was necessary. That said, I, like many in the Capitol, both Republicans and Democrats, don't really love the new tax structure. It could be worse. It has been worse since 2013, but it could be better. Under this structure, the lowest tax bracket pays a state income tax rate of 3.1%. The middle pays 5.25%. The top pays 5.7%. If you are a married couple, your lowest tax bracket is making between nothing and $30,000 per year. Middle tax bracket pays between $30,000 and $60,000. And then the top really covers a very wide range of salaries, anything over $60,000 a year. Under that old structure, there were just two brackets, one that paid 2.7, one that paid 4.6. And prior to the Brownback tax cuts that put those numbers in place, and then prior to the ensuing economic freefall, there were three tax brackets. So back as of 2012, before Brownback got the grand experiment going and the tax cuts in place, those three brackets were actually 3.5, 6.25, and 6.45. It's actually higher than, you'll hear people say that this is the largest tax increase in Kansas history, and technically, yes, that's true, but only because it had been slashed so low prior to that they, in order to make up ground, they had to increase it substantially, but they could have gone much higher. They could have gone all the way back up to the 2012 levels of 3.5, 6.25, and 6.45. So I'll just kind of lay out what I do and don't like about this. First, they just raised taxes on the poor. And I, like most people, am not a fan of that. The bottom tax bracket going from 2.7 to 3.1%. That's, again, for individuals making less than $15,000 a year or married couples making less than $30,000 per year. I mean, that's poverty. If a family's pulling in $30,000 a year, and I'm simplifying here because there are deductions, but I mean that means paying about an extra $60 or so each year in taxes. It's not much of a difference, but it's taking more money from the poor, which is generally just sort of unwise and draconian. But my other issue here is how close the rates are for the middle and the top brackets. It's only about 0.5% difference between the middle and the top. I will say it's only a big deal for a certain portion of the population, families who are solidly in that highest bracket but not incredibly wealthy. That extra 0.45% starts to rack up revenue for the state when we're talking about people making in the mid to high six figures, people making millions. The state isn't bringing in a ton from people who make $10 an hour. The bulk of it comes from the very wealthy, which is the way it is in pretty much every country in the world. But that brings me to another thing that this bill does. It closes the infamous LLC loophole. And we'll go ahead and take a break here before I go in too far down that rabbit hole. The LLC loophole has been the subject of a lot of discussion and disagreement and contention over the last few years. But when we get back, we'll go into that and kind of Sam Brownback's reaction to this whole situation. You're listening to Your Town here on KOFO.
Your Town with David Potter returns on KOFO after this.
The next general consignment auction at the Eastern Kansas Auction Barn is coming up June 24th. Consign your items today by calling Daryl Stottlemyre. Now, don't worry about harmful outside elements because the Eastern Kansas Auction Barn is a large indoor climate control facility. Consignments can be anything: farm implements, lawn and garden equipment, tools, furniture, and collectibles. If you have something to sell, call Daryl Stottlemyre at 785-241-0208. And we'll see you June 24th at the Eastern Kansas Auction Barn Auction.
Adamson Brothers Heating and Cooling reminds you to keep your family safe from carbon monoxide. We can test your CO detectors to ensure they're working. If you don't have a CO detector, we carry carbon monoxide detectors from CO Experts, our vendor of choice. Your family's safety is no joke, and carbon monoxide is a year-round concern, not just when your furnace is running. Your carbon monoxide detector should be tested at least twice a year. Call 242-9273 or stop by 102 South Walnut in Ottawa to learn more.
Did you know Dr. Hale's office is a full-service dental care center? If your child is having a toothache, your teenager needs his wisdom teeth removed, or mom needs a new set of dentures, Dr. Hale can treat these and other dental concerns. For quality care in a relaxed environment, call Dr. Hale's office 242-1800.
This Father's Day, it's the thought that counts, especially if the thought includes the Home Depot's 200-piece Husky Mechanics tool set with a lifetime warranty and a steel storage chest for just $99. Show Dad you're his biggest fan with top-quality Husky tools, a great storage chest, and a little change in your pocket. The 200-piece Husky Mechanics tool set with steel storage, just $99. Only at the toy store for dads. The Home Depot. More saving, more doing. See store for details, valid through June 21st.
I'm Nick Soboleski, a Select Quote agent with a true story that could save you hundreds of dollars a year. A woman named Linda just called. Her husband, Ray, has a $300,000 group life insurance policy, but is changing jobs and can't take it with him. Well, I impartially shopped the highly rated term life insurance companies we represent and found Ray, who is 41 and takes medication to control his cholesterol, a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $26 a month. That's almost twice the coverage for less than half of what he had paid. If SelectQuote hasn't shopped for your life insurance, you're probably paying too much.
For your free quote, call 1-800-445-6363. That's 1-800-445-6363. 1-800-445-6363. Or go to SelectQuote.com. We shop, you save. Get full details on the example policy at selectquote.com/commercials. Your price can vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
Worry less with Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Hey, thought you were going to be stuck at the repair shop with your car for a few hours.
I did too, but Liberty Mutual saved me from that nightmare.
Liberty did what?
Yep, with Liberty, I can get a repair estimate right on my phone. I just took a few photos of the dent and hit send. Now I just have to worry about getting the kids to soccer on time.
Wait, kids? Soccer? I gotta go!
Oh, bye.
Visit us online to get a quote. You can leave worry behind when Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance. Availability varies by state. Other restrictions apply. Coverage is underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company.
It may not be the holiday season, but there's always plenty of holidays to talk about. Father's Day is coming up. You could send a card. After all, Father's Day is the fourth largest card sending occasion with 74 million cards delivered every year. Set yourself apart by adding a Groupon experience with that card. Go to the Groupon app or Groupon.com for great bargains. ABC's Happenin' Holiday, sponsored by Groupon. Download the Groupon app and save up to $100 a week on what you do every day.
Right now through July 9th, get $60 by mail on a Firestone Visa prepaid card when you buy a set of 4 eligible Firestone tires. Increase your reward to $100 when you make a qualifying tire purchase with your new or existing CFNA credit card account. Whatever you drive a Firestone.
Claim form required. Only certain tire lines are eligible and must be purchased from a participating Bridgestone retailer's inventory May 4th through July 9th. Prepaid card is issued by the Bancorp Bank pursuant to a license from Visa USA Inc. and may be used everywhere Visa debit cards are accepted. The Bancorp Bank member FDIC expiration applies. The Bancorp Bank is not affiliated with CFNA credit card offer. CFNA offer subject to credit approval.
The The Richter United Methodist Church is hosting its annual yard sale today and tomorrow from 7 to 5. All proceeds to sponsors Children for Youth Summer Camps. For more information, give me a call at KOFO at 242-1220 or send me an email at KOFO@KOFO.com.
KOFO and Beckman Motors are sending you to see the two-time World Series champion Kansas City Royals at the K this summer. To win tickets, register at Beckman Motors in Garnett, and you could be there to see the Royals host the Toronto Blue Jays on Friday, June 23rd. We'll announce the winner on Monday, June 19th during the Brad Howard Early Morning Show.
Here's a swing and a high drive to deep right field. Way back is the right fielder, and it is gone. A home run by Mike Moustakas.
Register now to see the Kansas City Royals from Beckman Motors and KOFO.
It's Your Town with David Potter on 103.7 FM and 1220 KOFO.
And welcome back to Your Town here on KOFO 1220 and 103.7 FM. We'll be going till about 12:50 today, then getting you over to Emporia for the Ottawa Arrows baseball game and the pregame show there. So we've got about 15 more minutes left. If you want to get your calls in, go ahead. Call now, 785-242-1220. The way I said that, call now, it's like I'm selling something. No, other than my opinions, I guess I'm selling you my opinions, but so far no buyers. But what we were talking about prior to the break is what the public wants to talk about. It's tax policy. No, we'll talk a little about that, but then moving on with the subject of the legislative session and the governor's reaction to it. But I did mention the LLC loophole, and if you're not up on what that means, the 2013 tax cuts included language that specified that no entity filed as an LLC, a limited liability corporation, which is typically a small business designation, would be subject to paying any income taxes. In an innocent world, that sounds like a decent enough idea, incentivizing the creation of small businesses. It's hard to find a problem with that. However, we don't live in an innocent world, and by the way, Brownback and the 2012 Kansas legislature knew very well we don't live in an innocent world, if nothing else because they were told to support the legislation by the very people who intended to exploit it, their donors and PACs. But that aside, naturally, we ended up with 330,000 registered LLCs paying no taxes in the state. And we wonder why we can't come up with any revenue to fund the schools. Individuals were registering what they did for a living as its own business, in essence, and avoiding income tax. You had crooked individuals scrambling to shelter their assets under an LLC to cheat the system, and you also had honest individuals who were already legitimately operating small businesses under LLCs, some of whom they didn't ask for or need or even want that exemption, but it was handed to them. So, in essence, that ended up being a crooked law funded by crooked people, feeding crooked money into a crooked system full of crooked politicians who passed it knowing exactly what they were doing. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that a number of these politicians found themselves losing their title as members of the state legislature in last year's primaries and elections when Kansans collectively basically said, okay, we've seen the results, we've had enough. These legislators who voted for these measures back in 2012 had acted in concert with the governor to architect basically a series of policies that hurt Kansas when you get down to it. They hurt the people of Kansas. It caused our roads and highways to decay. That undercut our state hospitals, law enforcement agencies, schools, basically anything that received at least some of its funding from the state. And they did it knowingly. And so it didn't come as any surprise to me that Governor Brownback really, when he spoke out after the veto was overridden, that he lamented the legislature's decision to override it, despite overwhelming evidence supporting the fact that it was in the state's best interest. And it looks like we do have a phone call, so we're going to go to that now. We will now go to Dave. And Dave, you're on Your Town here. How's it going?
Hey, David. Hey, you spoke a moment ago and said that there was a number of LLCs that were not paying taxes at all. I'm pretty sure that the only thing that was lifted was the fee for the LLC. They still paid income tax.
When you say the fee to file as an LLC?
Yeah, it was wasn't a substantial fee. It was $100 and some odd, but it was the fee that was listed. You still paid tax on your income as an LLC. So it wasn't that they weren't taxed at all. It was that they just reduced that fee or dropped that fee.
Any asset you claimed as part of that LLC was not subject to any income tax, though.
Yeah, but it never has been, though. I had worked construction before, and there was certain stipulations on whether construction was new construction or remodel work, and it was taxed differently each one. That's been that way for a number of years.
Well, sure, it's taxed differently because you're talking about the difference between individual income tax and what's essentially then you're getting more into the territory of corporate income tax because you're running an LLC. So, yeah, it was taxed differently, but Kansas became the only state out of 50 in the country in 2013 to stop taxing anything, any sort of assets gained under that shelter of the LLC in 2013. That getting rid of that income tax for any assets that were filed that way, that was a new measure back in 2013. It was the only one of its kind in the country.
Yeah, but there were other fees that were added as well. There was company vehicles came under the what they called power or commercial license, and up until that point they were not taxed that way. But after 2013, so it wasn't that they got away scot-free. It's just a lot of it's changed, and I'm certain that a lot of the taxes were listed here and there, but to make a blanket statement that they were not taxed at all, that's not quite true.
Well, I didn't say they weren't taxed at all. I said they weren't subject to income tax, and that part is true.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for your time. All right. So we thank Dave for calling in. I feel like one of those horror movies where the call is coming from inside your own house. Something tells me. But, yeah, I always appreciate the phone call, and I'm always willing to have a little back and forth on this stuff so it's not just me talking to people the whole time. But moving on, so moving past the LLC stuff. So when Sam Brownback held his press conference to concede to the will of the 115 legislators who voted to overturn the veto of the bill, it came as no surprise that he was a bit defiant and obviously irritated. He wouldn't accept questions from the press afterward. And in his statement, he claimed that, this is a direct quote, the state has taken a big step backwards. And he said, quote, that he thinks it's the wrong philosophy. And I don't spend a lot of time being outraged by the words of politicians. I mean, I think we all know they lie, they spin, they make stuff up, they phrase things in a way to try and influence how we perceive them. But now and then, every once in a while, you hear a politician say something and you just have to stop for a moment and think, are you kidding me? A lot of political issues are issues of ideology. The most controversial ones, in fact, tend to be issues where there's no clear right or wrong, just different philosophies. The healthcare debate's an example. Some people believe healthcare is a fundamental right to be provided by the government, and that means taxes go up to pay for it, like it or not. Some people believe that it's a commodity, and some people aren't going to be able to reasonably afford it, like it or not. And there are a lot of viewpoints in between those two extremes. We all have our thoughts. Some of us, feel very strongly, and I think we all feel like we can support our side better than the other side can support theirs. But it can't be demonstrated to be better or worse because what you think is better is different from what the other side views as better. Economic issues can be like that to an extent, but at the end of the day, all of us in all areas of the political spectrum agree on one fundamental thing. That's that we want to see the economy, the state, and the country we live in succeed. Some of us want to see it succeed in different ways than others and maybe define success differently, but I mean, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, libertarian, independent, whatever, we all want to live in a better financial situation. We all want growth and stability. It's in literally everyone's best interest. And when it comes to the state of Kansas, economic growth has consistently been slower and less pronounced than the country as a whole since right before Brownback took office. And for the last several years, Kansas has been mortgaging state employees' retirement and pensions. Kansas isn't fixing its roads. Getting Kansas, a state that once proudly funded and boasted fantastic educational achievement, getting the state to fund its schools and invest in its children has been like pulling teeth. And if you step back and take your feelings on what you want your tax rate to look like and what you want government's operating budget to look like, if you really look at it objectively, I think anyone listening to this program would agree that all of these things, all those things that I just listed off, are bad things. That the state has been headed in a bad direction over the last several years. And while, yes, the ag sector has struggled recently, prices for some commodities that Kansas produces are down and have really struggled. It doesn't explain away the free fall that Kansas has been in. Some brownback defenders will tell you that other agricultural states have hit hard times as well, and they're not wrong. But what they won't say is that the times aren't nearly as hard as they have been for Kansas. And the more regressive the taxation policies are in those rural states, the harder they've been hit. And it doesn't get a whole lot more regressive than what we've seen out of Kansas here in the past few years. And so all of that is fact. It's a fact that KDOT has been horribly underfunded because it's been used by the state basically as their piggy bank for spare change when they're forced to throw money at other things by necessity. The same goes for CAPERS, which is the public employee retirement system. It's a fact that education spending, contrary to a popular misleading party line that you may have heard that we're spending more on education than ever, it's a fact that the education spending in the state has fallen off when you take into account inflation and some accounting tricks that have been played in the state of Kansas to make it look like more money's been going into education than it has. It's a fact that the economy in Kansas is growing more slowly and less dramatically in the state than the rest of the country. And that's not ideology. That's not opinion. You can't disagree with it. It's all true. And it can be spun and looked at different ways, but it's all true. So when Brownback stands behind a podium and shakes his head and says that increasing revenue through taxes to fund education, to really refund CAPERS, to refund KDOT, and by the way, the economy boosting projects that KDOT oversees, KDOT isn't just government spending. That money then goes to contractors who do the work as part of KDOT, and those road projects can put a lot of money into the economy through the jobs that they're creating. So he's saying that increasing revenue, at least in this manner, is heading in the wrong direction, but he hasn't been able to find a way to increase revenue to where it needs to be, and it's just been hammering on spending cuts. But I mean, it's clear that that's not the solution. It's not working. I can only come to a few possible conclusions as to why he's reacting this way. And the first, and I think the most likely, is that he's tied his political legacy to his tax cuts and to this economic model, which the legislature just cast aside, and which he won't have an opportunity to reinstate at this point because he's stuck with the legislature he has for the remainder of his tenure. So he can't give up the ghost. He has to go down fighting for this ideology because it's all he has left. He has no results to point to. He has no positive approval rating to point to, so he has to cling to his vision, even though he knows that it's been choking the state that he was elected to serve. Another possibility is that he's so enamored with this trickle-down experiment that he can't even allow himself to acknowledge the facts that are staring him in the face. He's willing to disregard the fact that a majority of legislators from his own party just said, sorry, Sam, it's over. Still insists that they need to wait it out. The third option would be that he's just ignorant, but I don't even believe that. I don't think he's so ignorant that he doesn't get what's going on. I do believe that he's just so hell-bent on his misguided philosophies working despite all evidence to the contrary that he's willing to overlook it all and refuse to admit defeat and plug his ears and scream, "I can't hear you," in the face of the overwhelming factual evidence that this nonsensical, harmful, foolish experiment he forced on all of us was a complete failure. And frankly, I think that's worse than outright ignorance. This is Your Town on KOFO.
Stay tuned for the following special presentation from KOFO 1220 and 103.7 FM. KOFO, your sports source for East Central Kansas, welcomes you to the Post 60 Ottawa Arrows American